Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Storytelling That Sticks for Business and Life podcast. I'm your host and story coach, keynote coach, TED Talk coach, Doug Stevenson, and I'm really glad you're choosing to spend this time with me. You know what we do in this podcast? We talk about storytelling and giving speeches and presentations and all of the craft that goes into that, all the stories that go into that, all the ideas and concepts and your approach, your spiritual, mental, physical, energetic approach to speaking in front of an audience, anywhere, in any size room. And I've done it all. Believe me, I've done it all. I've spoken in large rooms and small rooms. I even once spoke in a cafeteria to a group of people. And it's always the same thing. You have to approach it all in the same way. You've got to know what it is that you have to say, who you are saying it, and then you've just got to get up there and give it your best. So in this podcast, you're going to learn how to choose, craft, and deliver stories that stick. So are you ready to get started? Okay, here we go. Episode 62 in year 4, let the audience come to you. You know, I've spent a good amount of time in these past episodes, on the craft of storytelling. Now, in this episode, I want to focus on something different, but equally important, and that is your speaker presence, how you present yourself in front of an audience. I'm talking about you as a unique human being, your personality, your spirit, and the energy that emanates from you in any space that you enter. It's that essence behind every word and story, behind every concept and idea. It's that essence, that energy, that vibe that attracts people to you, your magnetism, if you will. And by audience, I mean any group of people who are gathered to hear you speak, anywhere. But audience can also mean, in a broader context, everyone that sees you, that witnesses you in your life, your friends and family, and the people you interact with out in public and at work. Because they're all watching you. They're all watching you. They're all seeing you and making judgments about whether they like you or approve of you or disapprove of you, think you're cool or not cool. So this episode is about how you define yourself and hold on to your sense of self in a world that is watching you, judging you, and challenging you. So when I say, let the audience come to you, what I'm talking about is being so comfortable in your own skin, in your sense of self, that instead of being codependent and being more concerned about how others perceive you, instead of focusing out, you calmly and confidently focus in to who you are in the moment and what you have to offer. And when you're giving a speech or presentation or TED Talk, you invite the audience to come to where you are, rather than you trying to go where they are. In other words, instead of trying to please them and what you think they want, you focus on being so strong in your content, your ideas, and your presence that they choose to come to you, to follow your lead, and to go with you where you want to take them. Now, I feel that one of the things that sets this podcast apart from other podcasts on storytelling is my background as an actor and performer. And you know about this. When you're a performer, your relationship with your audience is very different than your relationship as a speaker or trainer. What you learn how to do as an actor is to slip inside the character you are playing and to live inside that pretend reality while you're on stage in front of an audience. You learn how to be 100% present with yourself and your character, because the character you're playing isn't you. It's not you up there on the stage, it's the character. And the character is in relationship with the other actors on stage with you. Unless, of course, you're alone on stage doing a monologue, standing there in a spotlight with all eyes focused on you. But even then, you've got to be 100% present with yourself. And what's odd, and it is really odd, and I can remember this so vividly from the many times when I was acting in a play in a small theater, an intimate theater, where the audience was literally a few feet away from you while you're acting on stage. They're so close. You can hear them sniffling and coughing and oohing and eyeing. And there you are, mere feet away from them, mere meters away from them, but you're totally, completely focused in, totally in the moment. It's a very Zen experience. And it's an amazing thing to be so focused on yourself at that moment, about being present in the moment, that you discover your power. You discover how to focus inward and let all the distractions around you just fade away. It's like they're not even there. And I believe that's what presence is all about. And what happens in the theater is that the audience comes to you, to where you are and the other actors are inside the play, inside the environments and the reality of the play. You don't go to them as an actor. You don't go to them with your energy or focus. They come to you. And I've been able to translate that kind of focus to speaking in front of audiences all over the world, to all kinds of different audiences, in big rooms with thousands of people and small rooms with 20 or 30 people. To be totally present with yourself is to be free, free of self-judgment, free of concern or worry about what other people think of you, free to simply be who you are and let the chips fall where they may. I learned so much about being focused and present from being an actor that has helped me as a speaker and trainer. I've literally been in front of audiences since I was 19 years old. As an actor, I got more and more confident, more and more brave, more and more daring with each year, with each experience, with each play. But in my early years as a speaker, oh my goodness, I spent way too much time being insecure and tentative in ways that made me less effective, that sapped my power, because as an actor, I didn't interact with the audience. I could live inside my character, but as a speaker, when you're looking at the people in your audience and they're looking at you, it's hard. Would you agree? It's really hard not to lose some of your power and sense of self when someone is yawning or checking their phone. What I realize now is that I didn't know how to live inside myself, to be complete within myself when I was in front of an audience as a speaker. I was too focused on being liked and accepted rather than liking and accepting myself. So the lesson for this podcast episode is this: let the audience come to you. Let them come to you, which means that you stand strong in your power, totally committed to what you have to say and how you plan to say it, totally committed to each moment in your stories. And you're so solid in yourself that your audience members come to you, your reality, your ideas, your presence, because they find you attractive. Not in the good-looking sense, but in the magnetic sense. They are attracted to who you are, your energy and presence. For me, it's been a long and complicated journey. It's been hard to find that linkage to my transition to professional speaking, where I was often uncomfortable in my own skin. But the linkage is there in the need for presence, to accept that not everyone is going to get you. And that's okay, right? It's okay. Not everyone's going to get you. As a speaker, as a trainer, as a human being, not everyone's going to get you. And that's okay. So think of it like this. You and I are like ice cream or gelato or sorbet. Some people like chocolate ice cream and some people like pistachio. And some people even like this new flavor called bubble gum. I don't get that at all. But no matter what flavor you are and I am, someone is going to choose that. and someone else will choose a different flavor. Different people have different tastes in people, just like they have different tastes in ice cream. Chocolate ice cream doesn't care if you like it or not. It's simply one of many flavors. And I've had to accept the fact that I'm not for everybody and I will never be for everybody. And my only chance at success, is to fully explore and understand what makes Doug Doug. And I need you to do the same thing. What makes you you? And once I've got a good solid grasp of that, and I know how to do my Doug dance and sing my Doug song and tell my Doug stories, when I can be comfortable in my own skin, that's when I can be totally present in front of any audience, anywhere and at any time. And that's when I have found that my audience comes to me. When I'm just being me, totally me, comfortably me, that's when my audience comes to me, chooses me. Now, I've also experienced this from the other side, because it's hard for me to talk about it only from my perspective of them coming to me. I've had to experience it from being an audience member for someone else's story, how they draw me in simply by being present with their story and the moments and truth of their story. I remember, and this is really vivid for me, I remember a student who brought me a story to work on in a retreat. This guy was an adventurer. He went off on dangerous hikes and excursions and climbed mountains and stuff. And this story was about a time that he was hiking by himself on a remote island in the Pacific. And it was all up and down and jungle and difficult terrain. And along the way, he met another guy on the trail, and they decided to hike together. And that night, they had made camp and were sitting around a campfire, telling stories, whatever, I guess. And he excused himself to go off and go pee. So he walked away from camp and came to a good spot that he thought would be private, just above a creek, a small river. And so he found a secluded spot, and he placed one hand on a boulder for balance. And all of a sudden, the boulder gave way and fell onto him, onto his lap. Now, this boulder was huge, and it landed on his legs. He was pinned under this enormous boulder. And as he screamed for help, his hiking buddy ran and found him and tried to move the boulder, but it was no use. The boulder weighed way too much. It must have been a couple of tons or something. So his buddy ran away to get help. But they were on a remote island far from civilization, so it took many, many hours for his buddy to make contact with anybody and for a helicopter to arrive with help. And so now he recounted how he sat there for all those hours waiting for help to arrive, unable to move, unable to feel his legs. And he told us of how the stream below started to rise, that it had rained and the water caused the stream to start to rise, and the water started splashing over his feet. And then crawdads crawled up and started nibbling on his toes. They were eating his toes. But as he was watching this, he couldn't feel them. He could only watch. And then finally, when help did arrive, they had to amputate both of his legs because they were crushed. And I remember being so drawn in during the telling of his story that time stopped. It was such a compelling story that I found myself leaving the room that I was in and imagining myself being there in the jungle next to him, feeling helpless. And he was so present with the story that I went to him, to his reality, to his environment. And that's what I mean when I say, let the audience come to you. If you are 100% present with yourself, people will come to you where you are. I want to shift gears for a minute because that was pretty heavy, wasn't it? Did you feel that? Did you see that? Were you drawn in? Did you forget you were driving a car? Now, Taylor Swift is not for everyone. Would you agree? She writes a particular kind of pop song, and her voice is not for everyone. But her Eras tour just concluded. This is January 2025, and it just concluded, and it was the most successful and lucrative tour of all time. And I'm talking Beatles and Rolling Stones and Eagles and any band that you can mention. The most lucrative tour of all time. And if you watched any of her performances, she's not only an amazing singer and dancer, she has this wonderful presence. She's very likable. She's having fun up there, doing what she does without apology and with full commitment. She's a great example of someone who gets what it means to be comfortable in her own skin. She has presence, and she lets her audience come to her. So my question for you is, how comfortable are you in your own skin? Not just off stage, but in front of an audience. In my last episode, number 61, Make a Brave Choice, I talked about making brave choices in relation to the changes you need to make in your life. But for me, one of the bravest choices I ever made was to set myself free in front of my audiences, to get up there and not worry about who they were and what they were expecting from me, but to give them 100% Doug Stevenson. And all of my brilliance and silliness and seriousness and all of my insecurity, to let my audiences come to me, to come into my world, my reality, my ideas and stories. And I've said this before, and maybe you heard it and maybe not, but I decided at a certain point to start thinking of my audience members as guests at my party. Like the ballroom or meeting room or breakout room where I was speaking was my house, my party. And since it was my party, it was my rules. And my rules were simply, and I've actually said this to my audiences hundreds of times, you have now entered into the world according to Doug. And in this world, I'm going to share with you my philosophy and my methodology. And at the end of the day, you can take what works for you and leave the rest on the table. I actually said that to hundreds of audiences. And you know what? That statement really worked for me. It was like an invitation to meet me where I am. And you know what else? They often did, because I wouldn't have had a 25-year speaking career if they didn't. I let the audience come to me. I let the audience come to me. And not only did they come to me, many of them came up to me after my speech and thanked me. I mean, I can see myself at the front of a room after a speech with 10 or 15 or 20 people standing around me wanting to talk to me and ask me questions and ask for my card. And this is the best part. Many of them referred me to other people, and my business grew and prospered. I made money. I made a difference, but I made money. The closer you get to delivering on your promise to yourself, and the less dependent you are on the feedback from your audience, the better your feedback will be. When you find that quiet confidence within yourself, it will free you to say what you need to say and do it in a way that is 100% you, 100% authentic. So here is my challenge for you. Take stock of the times in your life where you were so focused on what you were doing that everything else faded away. Everyone else's opinion of you faded away, and you were just doing it. Whatever that was, you were just doing it, immersed in it, living in the moment. And the end result is that you were proud of yourself. Regardless of the outcome, you were doing it for yourself. Recall those moments, those situations and activities. Make a list, write them down, breathe them in, and then remember how focused you were and how that felt. I mean, you were in it. You were doing it. You weren't thinking about anything else. You weren't worried about anything else. You were focused. Remember how that felt. Make a list. So first, take stock of the positive moments of focus and immersion, and then take stock of the times when you lost focus. You compromised yourself. You gave away your power to someone else for whatever reason, and ask yourself, why? Why did I do that? What was that all about? And I'll pretty much guarantee you that it was because you were concerned about being accepted or approved of by someone else, and it cost you. It made you less effective. I know I've done it. I have. And it hurt. And it took me a while to come to grips with the gap between happy, confident, freewheeling Douglas and scared little insecure Douglas. And over time, scared little Douglas gave way to confident and secure Douglas. I think for most of us, that's the battle we've got to wage. It's not with other people. In order to let the audience come to you, you have to forget about them. Not to ignore them or discount them, but to forget about them judging you for the time it takes for you to give your speech or presentation or to tell your story. You have to focus in to the job at hand, the speech or presentation. You've got to be so confident in yourself and what you have to offer that you're going to be okay if you get a mixed reaction. Hey, some people like bubblegum ice cream. In William Shakespeare's play, The Tragedy of Hamlet, King Polonius says to his son, "This above all else, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day. Thou canst not then be false to any man." I'll say it again. To thine own self be true. I think that is the challenge for all of us when speaking to an audience or in your personal life. As a spouse or partner or parent, the challenge is to be true to ourselves. If you are true to yourself, you cannot be false to any man or woman or child. And when you are true to yourself, you can let the audience come to you. And you know what? They will. They will come to you. And that's how you will find your most satisfying success. Try it, my friends. Let the audience come to you. All right, well, that's it for this episode. If you feel that you learned something valuable today, something that you can use that will make your story stick, stories that make you and your business memorable, marketable, and monetizable, there are 3 things I'd like you to do. First, click on the follow or subscribe button and leave a review wherever you listen. And second, share this podcast with your friends and coworkers, your email list, and on social media. And third, connect with me on LinkedIn. And when you're ready to get serious about taking your stories to the next level, or if you have an important speech, presentation, or TED Talk coming up, or if you want some guidance on how to make the transition to becoming a professional speaker, let's schedule your free 30-minute coaching session where we can get to know each other and see if we're a good fit. And as always, I'd love to hear from you with your questions and comments. Let me know that you're out there listening and learning. You can send an email with your questions, comments, and suggestions to Deborah@DougStevenson.com. That's Deborah, Deborah, @DougStevenson.com. Hey, thanks for listening. Until the next episode, I'm Doug Stevenson.